How's it going, everyone? My name is True Underdog, and as promised, it is time for the every variation tier list in Mortal Kombat 11. So a little fun fact, before somebody found this for me on Twitter, I couldn't find it, so I actually went into Photoshop and made my own little index, and then I separated every image into a file, and I had them color-coded, and I was gonna do it that way, but thankfully, a hero on Twitter was able to find this for me. I'll put him on screen, and also the wonderful person who made this tier list in the first place. Now, the only issue now is that I don't always know the names of the variations. I always call them variation 1, 2, and 3, so every now and then I may have to pause to check off screen, but I'll edit that out. Alright, so without any further ado, let's start the tier list. So first up, we gotta find Jackie's variation 3. Where is it? Here it is. Okay, upgraded. So I do believe this variation is super strong even after all of the nerfs. And you know what? Just to keep things simple, let's try and do all 3 variations at first and then move them around as we need to. So we have first round KO. I think that's still really strong. Not as strong as upgraded, but still very good. And then her final variation, the flamey one. Where is it? There it is. Next gen. So next gen I think is B, maybe C tier. We'll see if D tier even exists, but for right now I think this makes sense. We have upgraded, which is godlike. We have first round KO, which is still really good, but its throw cancel got nerfed, making it a lot weaker, and Jackie's damage overall was nerfed, and that's why upgraded is so much better. It's got great mobility, great resets and mix-ups. And next up we have Joker, Ace of Knaves. This one has all the different setups that make him plus 1,000 on block. I think he might also be tied with upgraded Jackie, honestly, but tier lists don't have a way to visually show that. But it's really good. Ace of Knaves is really good. I think Madman is also okay. It would go like around maybe A or B tier. We'll see how big these tiers end up getting. But Madman's okay, it's just not fantastic. Ace of Knaves is just fantastic at like plus frames and setups, all that good stuff. And then we have the combo variation. What's that one called? Oh, Clown Prince actually is the one I'm thinking of. Clown Prince would go right here, and then Madman one more tier down. Madman is great for combos, Clown Prince has the parry, and even better, it can counter zoning to an extent, but I still think Ace of Knaves is all around better most of the time. And now let's talk about Johnny Cage. So Showstopper, pretty darn good. Where is his variation 3 at? I kind of wish they were organized by person, but they don't seem to be, so I have to dig around a bit. Outtake. Outtake is a really good one too. Probably also going to put that in, maybe A tier. And then finally, Shock Jock is maybe C tier even, but for now we'll put it in B tier. Yes, this is correct for now. This is the order I wanted it in. And you know what? Let's talk about the bad variations right now too. So one nice thing about this video is I don't think Shao Kahn's going to be at the very bottom because he has some okay variations, whereas some characters have some garbage ones. So Born Again. This thing is one of those why even use it variations. It's just not great at all. And then Force of Nature, that one's pretty good. I think Force of Nature is one of my favorites, but I'll put it in like A or B tier. And then the other one right here, Spring Cleaning is the combo one. It's my personal favorite, so gonna go ahead and put Spring Cleaning up here. That's not why it's up there, by the way, because it's my favorite. It's up there because it's also really good. If you watch top level Cetrions, they almost always start off with this, and they'll change to Force of Nature depending on the matchup, but this one has the best combos, and its zoning is also really competent as well, so a lot of players do use this one. And Liu Kang is also funny in this way as well. So Liu Kang has a godlike variation, an okay variation, and then a very not useful variation. So this one, really good, gonna put it up here for now. I think Cetrion's also in front, let's be real. Now let's find the really bad one, his variation 3. There it is, Dragon's Breath. Now maybe Dragon's Breath is not like D tier, but probably at the end of C tier or something like that. I'm not sure once again if I'm gonna even use D tier, but for now I think this makes sense. And where's that final variation? The more we go on, the easier it's gonna be to actually find the things we want, but it's still kind of digging for now. Here we go, Wuxi Legend. So Wuxi Legend is also really good. Let's go ahead and put that in this row, but where in this row? It's variation 2. I'd say it's currently at the end for now. Like Wuxi Legend is okay, but it's not fantastic, whereas this one is just amazing. Okay, and what about Shao Kahn? He's always a fan favorite, so Risen Emperor. That's always the fun one. I think that's the only one that's even slightly decent. Put that in front of these. See, once again, we'll have Shao Kahn not at the end, at least one of his variations, so that's really nice. I think True Kahn is pretty bad though. So where is that at? Okay, Realm Destroyer. I mean, I'm not sure how good Realm Destroyer is. I think maybe right here is a good spot for him. I don't think he's terrible, but he's not the best. And then where's the other one? Where's True Kahn? I think True Kahn is by far the worst one. It just has the taunts. Okay, here we go. So True Kahn for now is at the end, but look at that. We have Shao Kahn not at the end for one of his variations. Oh, that's time for celebration. Let's talk about Raiden. So Raiden. I think Raiden is really good. We'll put like Raiden way up here somewhere. I'd say like maybe right here is good for now, just behind first round KO. I think he's very strong. And then we have Thunder Wave. So Thunder Wave, not a terrible variation online, unless the opponent is like me and knows all of his weird weaknesses, like how you can duck the third hit of his staff spin. It still has the teleport, so a bit better against zoning, but Raiden actually breaks the game by having a 6-frame move, and its zoning is still okay. No real counter zoning, but pretty decent zoning. And Thunder Wave is better for counter zoning, but that's about it. Everything else he does is super risky, and like Raiden's already super unsafe on everything, so having no way to keep himself safe is a really big deal breaker. But then Truth and Light. Once again, one of the worst variations in the game, putting it like way back here. I don't think it's that far back. I'd say like maybe right here is where Truth and Light would go. I know Sonic Fox says there are some things about it, but I'm not entirely sure. I haven't seen anyone actually rock it in a competitive sense, so I don't know what it can really do. And let's go ahead and do Spawn next, just because Spawn is lined up nice and organized down here at the bottom. So the 1 is by far the most potential for me. I think it has the best opportunities for combos. It does okay in every other regard as well. I think it's somewhere, it's either at the start of B tier or at the end of A tier, one of those two. I'll have it here for now. And then the other variations aren't terrible. I think Hellspawn has some really cool applications as well. It's really fun to do actually online especially. I'd say right now it's at the end of B tier. And then we have the other one, From Hell. This one is just so boring, unfortunately. It has the coolest idea with all the guns, but it boils down to like 50-50s and anti-airs. That's pretty much all it is, and the occasional parry. So I really don't think it's a very viable variation. Not as bad as any of these, probably like up front here a little bit, maybe like around here is where it would be. It's not an awful variation, but it's just not very much fun and not very creative. I'm still not sure about Dragon's Breath. I've seen Ninja Killer use it once, but he didn't win that match using this variation, so I'm not even sure if it's any good. And next up, let's talk about Kotal Kahn. So Bullock, that is the new variation. A lot of players do stand by it, has some really crazy damage, and it's also pretty good for counter zoning, not because he beats your projectiles or punishes them, but he can just tank them while also getting his health back, so he can just survive your zoning, which is interesting. So Bullock is going to be like at the start of C or in like the middle of B, somewhere around there. I'll put it in front of Hellspawn for sure and in front of Shock Jock. Yeah, we're going to go ahead and climb up a little bit here. I think this is a pretty good spot for it, right behind the 1. I think that's pretty good. And then Ascension, I think, is a pretty darn good one too. Ascension has the most fun combos and the command grab mix-up, so I'm thinking like, for me personally, it's better. I know some people might think that Bullock is better. I think that Ascension's actually really good. I think the command grab mix-ups are very strong, and he also has meterless combos, so that's pretty nice as well. So I think Ascension is also really good. Maybe not in front of Spawn's the 1 though. It just feels weird putting them right next to each other, but I'm sure in time we'll have stuff in between. And then his worst one is Totemic. He turns into a cat. He can avoid some projectiles, but that's about it. And once again, Bullock kind of makes it useless because he can just tank projectiles. So I think Totemic's going to be down here in the bottom somewhere. It's not terrible, maybe like right behind Thunderwave. That's a good spot for now. I don't think it's useless, it's just the weakest of the 3. And now let's talk about Scarlet. I love Scarlet, but the girl is in desperate need of some buffs, so I think Heart Pierce is still her best variation. I don't see people using pretty much anything else, which is a shame because I think Blood Drive looks the coolest with the special moves, where she grabs you and sucks you in. It looks really cool, but Heart Pierce is just so solid, and once again, the teleport. That's a very big deal, so it's going to be up here somewhere, I think. Definitely in front of Thunderwave. It's going to be a bit weird here because the variation itself isn't actually terrible. It's more the core abilities of Scarlet, so I'm not quite sure how to judge that just yet, but that's definitely the best one that she has. And then Hemorrhage is going to be a bit further back, probably around here, like that. And then the other one's going to be towards the back. Wait, I grabbed the wrong one. I wanted to grab Blood Drive. How am I this dyslexic? Okay, Blood Drive is supposed to go here, and then Hemorrhage is going to be towards the back here. Among like, it's going to be in front of these two, I think, but it's still not super good. I think that makes sense for now. Man, it's going to be tough to figure out where to put things once this gets more and more full. And next up, let's talk about Frost, because I really like Frost. I like that she's a very solid mid-tier, maybe upper mid-tier character. I love that. So I think the weakest one for her is actually Frostbite. It's where she has the head that she tosses off, and it's not really a mix-up. So we can put that somewhere around here. I don't think it's super good. Maybe right here in front of Hemorrhage, I think might be okay. I think it's probably a bit less versatile than Realm Destroyer, so right about there is kind of fine. And then we have Arctic Anarchy, so this one is the most popular. I think it's like the lamest one, honestly. It's still fun to watch once a combo gets going, but it's just a bit safer, that's why it's so popular. it's going to be in front of a lot of these. So I think Arctic Anarchy is like up here somewhere. It's pretty darn good. Maybe even in front of Wuxi Legend. It's pretty darn solid. And then finally we have the last one. Let me see if I can find her here. Where are you, Frost? Ice Machine. I personally like Ice Machine because it has the hypest combos from mid-screen, and in the corner the combos get pretty good too. But Arctic Anarchy has really good counter zoning and even better mid-screen zoning as well, and the corner combos hurt just as much, and she has the fun bomb setup, so it has way more potential and it's a lot more versatile, whereas this one is pretty much rushed down with some fun combos from mid-screen as long as you have solid hit confirms. And then this one was meant to be a setup variation, but it's just not very good at its job, so it's down here. And I guess now is as good a time as any to talk about Sub-Zero. So Thin Ice, I think we can all agree, is now the most solid variation. It's very lame, very keep away heavy, a lot of zoning, but maybe like here could be fine. And then his next one, the Avalanche one, is also pretty darn good. I think it works even better online. I don't think it's as good as Thin Ice, but it's definitely better than his 50-50 variation as far as like competitive play goes. Avalanche, I think, would be like around here maybe is a nice spot for that. And then we have the Dead of Winter, which I think is pretty darn good online, but this isn't really like an online only tier list. It's an all around overall solidity tier list, like how good is the character, period. So Dead of Winter, that's the one that relies on mix-ups and stuff, so I think it's in front of Shock Jock. And then Katana, let's talk about Katana. So everyone swears by Highborn Katana, that it's super broken, needs to be nerfed, but even so, I don't see her very much at tournaments, so I'm not sure if it's as great as everyone says, but I do agree that it's pretty darn good. It's gonna be up here somewhere. So maybe right in front of Wuxi Legend, it's pretty darn good. Gonna put it there for now. And then Fanfare got so many buffs. I'm not sure if Fanfare is like tied with Highborn or what, but as far as matchups go, it might not be as good because it doesn't counter zoning as well as Highborn does, because Highborn can counter your zoning and then zone better than you, whereas Fanfare can just get damage buffs from zoning, and that's about it. Like when she counter zones you, she gets a damage buff, but she still has to get in, so maybe it isn't quite as good. Put it like maybe behind Wuxi Legend, because it's okay, but not fantastic, maybe like right here. And then she has the mix-up variation, Fearless. I hear some people stand by this, but it is a 50-50 variation, so I'm going to put it around the same area as Dead of Winter, because it requires a lot of mix-ups, and in fact, it's probably behind Dead of Winter because she doesn't get rewarded as much for the 50-50s. But then again, she has a safe option, so maybe it is in front of it. And maybe it's like right here-ish, there? No, there. I think that's a good spot for now. I think it's a pretty good spot. And then we have Jade. So I still do think, unfortunately, that Emerald Defender is the best variation for Jade, even though it's the most boring. It's got a lot of keep away, but it gets the most out of pretty much every interaction, and she does dominate from the air with her projectiles, so it's pretty darn good. I gotta find a new phrase besides pretty darn good, huh? It's very good. Or behind Highborn, because she's not good up close. I think that could work. Maybe behind Wuxi Legend. Could be a good spot for it, like right here. There we go. It's not working with me right there, yeah. And then Jaded. I think Jaded is also pretty good. It's pretty fun to play with, especially online. And offline, it's going to be even easier to reinforce those plus frames. But I don't think it's as good as Emerald Defender. I think it'd be like right here behind the one, maybe even behind Ice Machine. Jade's biggest problem is that she never gets very much off of her guessing, like her 50-50s. So it comes down to just pressure, but they can just block and then let go of block and crouch to avoid a lot of her high attacks. So offline, Jade does suffer a lot without the crazy zoning. And then she has Untamable. I hear a lot of people talk about Untamable, but I've never seen anything crazy done with it. I really haven't. Her combos get a lot weaker. Her counter zoning is like the weakest it can possibly be because she can't even go purple. So it's going to be back here somewhere. I think like behind Next Gen maybe, and in front of Madman, or like around here. Maybe even behind Fearless, let's be real. To me, it's probably around here. Once again, it has the weakest counter zoning, and nothing really makes up for that. She gets a teleport, but it's a teleport you can full jump punish, so that's pretty darn bad if they bait it out. They can hit you with a full combo. It's really bad, worse than being unsafe. And she has the extra strings, but a lot of those extra strings have gaps in them, so against a good player, they just punish you every time. So I don't think Untamable is that good, unfortunately. I like the teleport, but losing purple and also having all those gaps in your string is a pretty big deal. And then let's talk about Noob Saibot. So Seeing Double is by far the strongest variation that he has, especially for competitive play. I think it would be up here. This is a good spot for it, I think. I think it's a good spot for it for now. Seeing Double is super strong, keeps yourself safe on pretty much everything. The combos take a bit of a dip, but the combos that are short still do a good amount of damage. Okay, so Dark Sabbath is my personal favorite, has the best combos, but he also can't keep himself safe in a lot of situations, so not quite as good as Seeing Double, but I still like it a lot. I think it would be like right behind the one, or Ice Machine, because it's still very combo heavy, very combo centric, great for punishing, but the opponent pretty much has to do something unsafe for Dark Sabbath to work. Otherwise, it's tons of high attacks and no way to really make you stand up, so lots of uppercuts or lots of whiffing. He has to land that down 1 before he can do anything, so it's just not as strong. And then Pitch Black. So I wanted Pitch Black to be like his new premier variation, but I didn't think it would be, and it seems like it's not. Once again, really solid conversions off of new strings like his 4-2, but his damage still isn't as good as Dark Sabbath a lot of the time. It can be, but only after certain strings. So I think it's like around here behind Thin Ice. Pitch Black is not bad. It's really not bad. And next up, let's talk about Baraka. So variation 1, known as Marauder, has been and will always probably be the best variation. Super aggressive, gives him some special normals, all that good stuff. It's gonna be up here in front of Outtake maybe. It's pretty darn good. I enjoy it. Sorry, said it again. And next up we have Bone Picker and Berserker. So the interesting thing is both of these variations do pretty similar things, but I think oddly enough, Berserker does it better because Bone Picker has some 50-50s in it, which is interesting because he has like the flying tackle, the command grab, which can be ducked. So you want to block his overheads, but then he gets you with that, and if not, he can get you with lows. So it's an okay variation, but Berserker is better because he has the leg kebab, and he has some fun corner carry and all that good stuff, so I think Berserker is probably better. Is it in front of Pitch Black? Yeah, I think most certainly. Is it in front of Thin Ice? No, I don't think so at all. So I think right here's a good spot for now, and then Bone Picker, that's like the slightly weaker one. I would say it's, I think here's a good spot actually for it. Just in front of next gen. And then we have Scorpion, a character very popular, especially online. So Searing Rage is everybody's favorite, and I do think it's the best variation now just because Reborn got nerfed so much. But with that said, Scorpion's not a super strong character anymore. He's really not. Searing Rage would probably be around here in C tier, like at the very front, but not anywhere higher, I don't think, at least not yet. And then Reborn got nerfed pretty darn hard, so it's going to be somewhere in the middle of this tier. I'd say it's probably behind Dragon's Breath actually, because yeah, just like once you're playing offline, the person can duck your teleports every single time, so they can't reinforce it at all. It really only works online, the cancels, because by the time you realize it, due to the latency and input lag, you can't punish him, and he can do like shenanigans, like teleport and then cancel and then throw you. But offline, you just get hit every single time, because you can just react to the teleport and duck and then just punish. Burning Spectre is an interesting one. It's likely his worst variation. It's going to be back here towards the end. Some people tell me they make it work, but I haven't seen anyone do anything crazy with it online, so I think it'd be like in front of Truth and Light. It's not gimmicky enough to be back there, but probably behind Hemorrhage still. In fact, let's go ahead and move Scarlet right here. I think she should be in front of Frostbite. And next up, let's talk about Jax. So Hunker Down is a really good one. Where are you, Hunker Down? There you are. Hunker Down is a super solid variation, not just online, but also offline. It's super decent. So I think it would be like in front of Seeing Double, because Jax is just super solid. Like, he really is. Jax can pretty much make no mistakes in this variation, and he also has a command grab if he wants to get a bit risky, but otherwise he's 100% safe and gets all these rewards. And then we have Grinning Beret, which is the mix-up variation, but once again, a lot more risk than what Jax ever really needs. He already has great pressure and great damage off of very short strings, but I think Grinning Beret has some potential. I'd say maybe in front of Ascension. That's a good spot for it. And then Ringer. I haven't seen anybody make Ringer work, so it's going to be around here in like the Shock Jock territory where it's not terrible, but I haven't seen anybody do anything impressive with it. And next up we have Devorah, once again a character I enjoy playing quite a lot. So Buzzed I think is still her best variation. It's the setup one, and honestly Devorah in the hands of a good player is one of the better characters in the game. She's like upper mid tier, so she's going to climb up here quite a bit. I'd say around here is actually a pretty good spot. Maybe about here is pretty good for Buzzed. Buzzed is really good. It's a fun variation. It's got the setups, has the best conversions, all that good stuff. And then your combo variation. Where'd it go to? I lost it. Well, Creepy Crawler is her worst one, so let's go ahead and do that. It has 50-50s, but you live and die by the mix-ups, and the reward isn't that high. She does have some really impossible to block situations, but the damage you get isn't very much because one of them knocks you down. So that's tricky, but she doesn't get very much damage off of it. So I'd say like it's around here. It's better than Frostbite because it's the same idea as Frostbite, only it does it better. So I'd say it's around here. That's a good spot for it. And here we go, Arachnophobia. I couldn't find her because her skin was different. Okay, Arachnophobia, that's the combo variation, and it has the good throw also. So I don't think Arachnophobia is bad. Let's go ahead and put it like behind Bullock. That makes more sense. Here we go. I was getting a bit crazy there. Behind Bullock I think is good for this. And then we have Sonya, the character who gets nerfed over and over again but never becomes bad. You wouldn't know that based on online play though, because you don't see her very much online, but people who play her online are really good with her. Ringmaster is still the scariest one, even offline, because she still has the low combo conversion in the corner. How about right here between Baraka and Johnny Cage, because a similar playstyle, but requires way more risk than Marauder? Nah, I'll put it right there. Put her right in front there. There we go. And then Tin Hut is one of the terrible ones, unfortunately, all because the startup is too high on her little robot cat. If it came on the screen faster, it would actually be a pretty good variation. It has the most fun combos and the best pressure and the frame traps and all that, but it just takes so long to get out, and that makes it almost useless. So I'd say it's like behind Burning Spectre. Yeah, it's a good spot for it. That'll work for now. And then the middle one, which I haven't done, No Holds Barred. That's the parry variation. I think that one got stronger due to the 5-frame input buffer on block, but even so, I don't think it's an incredibly great variation except in certain matchups. So I'd say it goes around here, like around where Bullock is, where it's still pretty darn interesting. And if you're like super skilled and know every character's strings, it can really blow up those characters. But at the same time, they can beat it by just not finishing their strings and then punish you for going for the parry. And next up, let's talk about Garris, because Garris is one of the few characters where his newest variation 3 is actually arguably his best variation, because it has a second combo breaker. And you could argue that second combo breaker is actually better than the regular combo breaker, so Eternal is actually pretty darn effective. I'd say like around here. I think it's pretty good at what it does, so here's a pretty good spot for it. I could even put it higher, but this is tricky. I'll have to go through it one more time when I'm not recording and just revise everything, but I think right now it's a good spot for it. New Era. New Era has always been the one that's not very useful, so it'll be down here somewhere, around where Thunderwave is, but probably at the front, because Garris is never bad. So like here maybe? No, I'd say like here's a good spot for it. It's not terrible, but it's not great either. Doesn't really excel at anything. And then we have Infinite Warden. This one is by far the most popular online, but I don't think it's the best in the hands of a good player. It's just a bit too limited on what he does. It's mainly combos. So with that in mind, it's probably just like better than Berserker and Pitch Black. That's kind of like where it would be. Like around here. Oh, it's got to be in front of Ascension, though. Let's be real. Yeah, there we go. That's a good spot for it. Ho ho, and then we have Shang Tsung. So here is where things get interesting, because which one's better, Warlock or Soul Eater? I think Warlock is really good at zoning, arguably the best zoning variation in the game still, and Soul Eater, though, is what I see all the pro players using. But I think we can all agree that Spellmaster is the worst. So that's going to go around here somewhere in the useless area, where it's like not even good, so like around Truth and Light. Maybe even behind Truth and Light. That's tough. It's probably tied with Truth and Light. So let's go ahead and put Warlock somewhere first. So this one is still really good at zoning. Fantastic keep away if you ask me. So it's better than all of these, I think. Maybe not as good as Fanfare Katana. I really like Fanfare Katana. I think it's a pretty good spot. Emerald Defender is probably behind Katana, let's be real. So that's pretty good. I like that spot right there. Soul Eater. I think that Soul Eater must be the best, because all the pro players who use Shang Tsung still are using Soul Eater. So I'd put it around. That's a good spot, actually. He kind of just ended up there, but I think it's a good spot for him. I don't think that this should be up there. I think she'd be like behind. She's probably tied with him, actually. Frost and Shang Tsung here. So that's a good spot for now. That's a good spot. And then we have Cabal. Once again, a character whose variations I did not know the names of, so I had to actually look them up, which is happening quite a lot right now. But I think Mean Streak is the one that we see all the pros doing, so it must be the best. It has the run, dash, cancel. It doesn't have the 50-50s, but his cancel is so quick that he can just constantly do stuff, and unlike Scorpion, it's still an attack you can't duck. So it still can actually reinforce pressure, because you may want to press a button, but if he just lets that move go, that Nomad Dash go, he just hits you for a full combo, and it's meterless. That move does not cost anything to extend combos. I wouldn't put it in front of Fanfare just because it can't do the crazy stuff that Fanfare can do in some situations, like no damage buffs or anything, but it's good. It's decent. A very powerful variation. And then the spins. Which one's the spins? Oh, that's variation 3. Okay, yeah, variation 3 is fun. I think it's also super solid, especially online, but not quite as versatile. It doesn't have the pressure of the other variations. Unless he hits you, then he has the gas blast, which is interesting. And the combo damage is actually the highest. I'd say it's like around here. That's a good spot for it, because it has combo damage just like all of these, but it's just not quite as good at everything else as these are. So that's a good spot for it. And then we have Clean Cut. which is like the 50-50 variation, which I still think is good. Online, it might be one of the best, just because having 50-50s is super nice. And because it relies on that, I'll probably put it around this area where it's here. And then we have Kung Lao. Kung Lao is an interesting one. He was bottom tier, then he was amazing, then he was mid tier, then he was bottom tier. No one's quite sure where he is. Depending on who you ask, he's great and super annoying, or he's terrible. Depends on what kind of player you ask, but Hat Tricks is the one I see most players using. Now with that said, a lot of players don't use him. Okay, now I'm starting to feel overwhelmed. There are so many things here. But Hat Tricks is a very Oki-based variation. He has to knock you down and do stuff. So with that in mind, it's not going to be way up here, but I'd say it's better than all of these like gimmicky variations. So I'd put it probably right here is a good spot for it. Just right in front of Cabal there. And then we have his Order of Light. So everyone tells me Order of Light has potential, and I've seen it used like one time at a tournament, but it was early on when it just came out, so I think they were just practicing with it. I don't think Order of Light is that great, honestly. I don't think it's terrible either, so it'd be like around here, next to Dead of Winter. So Lotus Fist has some potential too. It has the weird hat stuff where he can teleport and keep himself safe. So it's gonna be above here, but not by a lot. I'd say it's like right behind Jaded. It has some fun gimmicky stuff, but it requires a lot of effort to get even the most basic thing done. So, you know what, it can't be in front of Garris, there's no way. Then Grinning Beret, but the reward is also lower, so I'm not sure. But I'm not gonna have two Kung Laos touching. I'm not gonna let that happen, so here's a good spot for it for now. And next up, let's do Nightwolf, because I want a challenge, I want to torture myself. So the main one that I see people using is Motoko Warrior. That seems to be the most common one, has the combos, has the damage buff. It just seems like the all-around most solid one to go with, though I think Variation 3 also has a lot of potential, so they're going to be pretty close together. Let's see, where would I put it here? It'd be in front of that for sure. It'd be above most of these. It's a pretty solid variation. It's going to be in the top or in the more upper area for sure. It's going to be, I wouldn't put it in front of Arctic Anarchy, but I would put it in front of Soul Eater, so that's a good spot for it. So once again, Shaman is also a pretty solid variation. I like it. I think it has more potential in some matchups than the other one, Motoko Warrior, but most of the time it's just not, and that's what a tier list is, right? How you match up against other characters. It's gonna be close though. Like I would put it, yeah, here's a pretty good spot for it. Maybe right behind Mean Streak. I think it's really good. I think it's decent. Here's a good spot for it. And then we have the weakest one, the grapple one, Ancestral Gift. I like this one though, that's the sad part. I like Ancestral Gift. It's like the most fun to watch, but it just feels like one of the weakest ones. It has a really good gimmick, but that's it. It's like pure gimmicks. So with that in mind, it'd probably be around here next to Dead of Winter, where it's like pure mix-up. And next up, why not Sindel? Because she's also a DLC character, so let's just keep that ball rolling. So here we go. So Loud and Clear is the one I see most pro players using because it has some really good unbreakable damage. The problem is getting that started, but it's also better for avoiding zoning too, because she can hop through the air, so it's a pretty darn decent variation. It's not going to be in front of any of these though, because as I mentioned before, I don't think Sindel is one of the better characters in the game. That's a pretty good spot for it. It's kind of the same as the one, but with like a few more gimmicks that make it better. So I think that's a good spot for it. And then we have Splitting Hairs. That's the combo variation, but as a result can lose a lot harder to zoning than the other variation, which is better. So got to keep that in mind. Splitting Hairs is like pure combo, so it'd be around where Pitch Black is. But at the same time, she's even weaker than Noob Saibot when it comes to counter zoning, so probably behind him. That's a good spot for that. And then we have Royal Edenian. That's the counter zoning variation. It can also zone itself. I don't think it's super strong. Sindel is once again one of those weird characters. She covers 3 different playstyles in each variation, so it's tough to figure out where she'd be. You know what, I'd say right about here, because unlike No Holds Barred, Royal Edenian can still make its playstyle work without the opponent doing some gimmick to outsmart you. It's solid at what it does, whereas No Holds Barred, they can just out-thank you and win. You want to parry, and they just go, no, I'm not going to give you a parryable situation, and you go, darn. And next up we have Collector. Sonic Fox made this character look super good, so we know the Collector does have some potential. Back in the Pack is still the most popular variation, though Variation 2 is also pretty fun, but Back in the Pack is the main one. Here's a good spot for it, I think. Yeah, I like that, it's a good spot for it. And then we have Spare Change. That's the fun variation too, which also has potential. Spare Change has potential, but you don't see it very often. It only shines in certain matchups. I would put it like here. Yeah, it's a good spot for it. I think it works here. And then we have the worst variation, the Squander. This one is just pure combos. That's it. But everything else it's weak at. It pretends to have anti-zoning, but it doesn't. It really doesn't, so it's not a good one. I'd say it's not terrible though, so it's not going to be as bad as Thunderwave, because you can still make Squanderer work, but it's not great. So here's a good spot for now. And then we have Aaron Black. So most people will tell you that Aaron Black is just not the character he used to be, and that's certainly true. And sadly, his new variations didn't help that much. I would argue variation 2 and 3 aren't super useful, but 52 card pickup, that's where it's all at. This is still an okay variation. It's not great, but it's okay. It's going to be better than some of the gimmicky stuff. Here is a good spot for it, I believe. And then we have Barking Irons. Barking Irons is a pretty silly one. I don't think it has much potential. Same with Locked and Loaded. It's going to be one of those gimmicky ones. So give me a second to think here. I'm sorry. It's going to take me a bit. Around here, maybe. Because it's very gimmicky, just like From Hell. So around there. And then Locked and Loaded is probably the worst one. So it's going to be behind things that are even useful. Like Locked and Loaded, it's just a pure setup variation. It's mostly for online. It's going to be around here in this area. Yeah, it's going to be around here. We're getting close to being done. We're getting close here. Only about like 3 more characters. Next up, let's do Kano. So Kano is an interesting character because I feel like all 3 of his variations actually have a lot of potential. But if you ask me, Ripper is still the best simply because that command grab mix-up is very good. It's super strong. So he's going to be up here somewhere. He's a very fundamentally strong character, especially in this variation. I think it's decent. Like, by itself, I think it's pretty decent. So, like, maybe in front of Cabal, I think it's good. I think it's super decent. And then Dirtbag. This is a weird one. I haven't seen anybody make Dirtbag work, but everyone tells me Dirtbag is fine. It's like collector's spare change. I don't see many people use it. I don't even see pros use Dirtbag outside of Sonic Fox messing around with their buddies. But outside of that, I don't really see him. So I'm not sure, like, about the potential of Dirtbag. But I would say it's behind a lot of these. Probably, yeah, it's a good spot for it because it plays very similar to Spare Change, honestly, and also Jackie's next gen. They play pretty similarly. And then Ratbag is the combo heavy one, which I think is actually better because he also has a mid projectile. So that one's going to be up here somewhere. It's going to be around where Jaded is. I do think so. Yeah, I'd put it actually in front of Jaded because the combo, like, what you get for the combos is way better, but it's not as good as the spins. I think that's a good spot for it. I think it's perfect, actually, for Ratbag. That's a good spot for it. Okay, and then we have Terminator. So this one I actually do know the names for. So with Terminator, Dark Fate is the one you see everybody use because it has the Running Man, which makes it pretty darn good. So the Running Man is everyone's favorite with Dark Fate. Where would that be? It's a pretty strong variation. I think it's still kind of gimmicky, though. So it would be behind a lot of the more solid variations, probably in front of Infinite Warden. I think it's decent. And then we have Final Judgment. So that's the bad one that you never see anybody use. So it's going to be around here somewhere. I'd say it's about where Squanderer is, maybe behind Thunderwave. Has 50-50s though. I'd say here. No, here. Here's a good spot for it. Destroyer is the crazy combo heavy one, but not as many mix-ups. But even then, like, he still has a command grab. So I think it's going to be up there actually where the Running Man one is. It's pretty strong still. Oh yeah, it's definitely going to be around here. I would say it's like behind Infinite Warden because they're playing pretty similarly, but it's not as solid. Because let's be real, who's going to win in this fight? Like, we know, right? And who's going to beat most characters? This one as opposed to Destroyer. So I think it's a good spot for it. Feel bad for Terminator. He's just a bit too slow. He's like Sindel, just a bit too slow. And last but not least, we have Cassie Cage. I just find it kind of funny it worked out this way because I have nothing against Cassie Cage and I know more about her than some of the other characters, so I have no idea why she's last, but she is. So Subs OD, despite the name, is by far one of her worst variations and also one of the worst variations in the entire game. I don't think it's as bad as Born Again because it's not Russian roulette. You can still know what you're gonna get, but it's all setups and the setups have like obvious answers to them. It's not great. It's got mobility too, but it costs meter, which makes it immediately worse. So it's just not that great. And these two, these last ones, Yas Queen, Digital Soldier, they play differently, but in my mind, they're pretty even. Like, they may be touching, because they're pretty even. Yas Queen is great for counter hits and blocking late and like standing combos, whereas Digital Soldier has really good counter zoning because she gets low and shoots under projectiles and avoids them, so that's pretty solid. The combos are a bit trickier though, and the opponent can break away immediately. So they're both good at opposite things. But I think Yas Queen is better in the hands of a skilled player because once again, you can't drop out. So as long as you can kind of manage the opponent's zoning, it definitely is better. You know, I would say around here is actually a pretty good spot for it. And as I mentioned, Digital Soldier is going to be up there pretty high too, because it's also pretty strong just for different reasons. This is so tricky. It's so tough at this point. But the good news is we've placed every single character. So now that that part is done, what I'm going to do now is when you're not watching, I'm going to cut out all the footage where I rearrange people as I scroll down here and see where they should be. That way I don't waste your time with that. But once I'm done, I'm going to show you the final finished product. sucked. Alright, so about 15 minutes later, I've made quite a few changes. One of the main ones was actually evening out the brackets, so as you can see, B and C and A are a bit more balanced now. You don't have just everybody in A and nobody in S. It feels a bit more even now, but who knows, I may still change some things around, but for right now, here is what the tier list looks like for me personally for every variation in Mortal Kombat 11. My god, that took almost an hour and a half. I'm not sure how much I can trim it down to for you guys, but for me, it took almost an hour and a half just to record this, let alone editing, so this has been quite a battle. So thank you so much for watching, and I hope you enjoyed. If you did, please leave a like down below. It really does help my channel out a ton. And then while you're down there, please let me know what your tier list looks like or what problems you have with my tier list personally. And then finally, why not keep that combo going by subscribing and ringing that bell? That way you never miss a future video. Make sure to come back next time, and as always, stay underdogs.